So, good evening, everyone. Students from the college have been invited from Hemoprabha, and a few students who have joined from my own college. So, today I have been invited to present you on this course, add-on course on partition literature. So let's first discuss with what exactly when you like what is partition literature? How do we come to read partition literature? Although we have read in history about India's partition, um, uh, we are now into the field of literature and we are like moving into reading a lot of Southeast Asian literatures written by mostly the writers of Southeast Asia, and a part of this is a part of your post-colonial discourse. Like it also concentrates the partition, the stories of partition, the thematics that we will be discussing today. And please remember that the East Asian literatures, which are mostly written by the writers from here, and specially concentrating today is the partition literature written by writers of both India and Pakistan. So when I talk about Pakistan, it's both yeah, East Pakistan and West Pakistan. Now, just to get you engaged in this discussion, I would like you, like any one of you, tell me a bit about when you hear the word partition, what do you understand? Anyone can like answer it. When the word partition is uttered, what do you understand?
This is an interactive session, students, so you must participate and interact.
Nineteen 1947 partition of India and Pakistan and letter of West and East Pakistan in 1971.
Uh, so when we look into the history, we're talking about history. We have read Indian history. History about India's partition. About India's partition. I guess I have a few mics on. Like, can you Santulan, can you manage
Deepika,
it?
lower the volume of your laptop.
All right, thank you. Is this okay now? All right. So, looking to the history, what exactly are we discussing in partition literature? So we know in the history that India was divided. Now, this decision was made way before when we are celebrating our India's independence. So, when exactly was this? So, India's partition was actually announced by the last Viceroy of India, who was Admiral Lord Louis Mountbatten, on 3rd June 1947. So he had a few plans before he laid down this final plan, which is also known as the Mountbatten Plan. And he laid this plan where he actually offered, or there were like principles, there were provisions that he made for the British India, stating that India be given its independence and the power being, power be transferred only when like the country is divided by two, because there was already emerging two emerging powers. One was from the Muslim League side. So India was divided on the basis of religious majority. One was Hindu majority and another was the Muslim majority. So the Muslim majority country was called Pakistan and the Hindu majority as it is stated as India. Now, there was further on, we're just talking about the west of Pakistan. Looking at the Bangladesh side, which we know as now, which Bangladesh, when it became independent only in 1971, 71, after its independent war. Before that, it was a part of the West Pakistan. Uh, but even before that, in 19 July 1905, Bengal's partition was already discussed or decided by Lord Curzon. So he planned that there should be a territorial reorganization of the state, and it was again based on religion. So the majority of the Muslims were on the east of Pakistan, and the Hindu majority were in the Bengal. But this was then opposed by the nationalists, the progressive groups during that time, calling it as divide and rule policy. And then within 6 years, it was undone. The whole partition that was for Bengal in 1905, which was laid down, was undone within 6 years to be again, for the second time, the divide was created in 1947 because the mainland India was already getting divided. So this is just a you know, brief about how India's partition comes into being. So this is what we read in our history book text. But what exactly we have not come across in the history book, or is actually, the not the empiricals, not the facts, but the stories that's coming from the individuals, and these stories are based on different themes, and these themes are about, aftermath of decolonization. It is about making of a new nation. It's about the Holocaust. It's about the social structure and the religion. When the people are being, they are living in two different countries. Then there is diaspora movement of people from their homeland to a new country, identity, the self crisis, and also we are also concentrating on women during partition. How partition has affected the women's status, or it was already, they were the marginalized section, and how women during the partition has have been treated. So these are the major themes that we'll be concentrating today, and I'll be taking a few literatures that I've read, and that's also in your mentioned course, and we'll be discussing on that. Now, when it comes to literature, okay, so literature is a multi-layered and a complex. It's a nuanced. It's nuanced and it's multi-layered, and it has complex stories. Complex stories of individuals. So one of the most popular literature or partition literature that you would come across is Khushwant Singh's Train to Pakistan, published in the year 1956. So Kushan Singh's Train to Pakistan is it's about that first ride, from India towards Pakistan, train to Pakistan, and the passengers of the train who are heading towards the other country, the new country, have encountered ghastly scenes, people being burned, the train being completely burned. Uh, in few stations, they are seeing dead bodies lying, and like towards the end of the story, the train arrives at the destination with passengers who are not alive. They're basically dead. They're mostly dead. Most of the passengers are dead. So when the narrator in Train to Pakistan is describing about what he sees on this journey to his new country, the train when it passes through various cities, he sees different things happening. There's a riot. There's people who are rushing towards the church to they push enter into the coaches just to save their lives. There are children crying on the platforms of different cities. These are the pictures that Kushwant Singh has shown in Train to Pakistan. Then there is Intizar Hussein's Basti. So Intizar Hussein's Basti is an Urdu writer, And first published his writing in 1979, which was in Urdu, then later translated and published in 1995. Intezar Hussain, he himself being born and brought up in India, his own memory, he has given a picture of his own life, his own memory in the story through the character Zakir. Now his story in the Basti, like the term Basti is it's a Urdu word for a settlement. So the story of the settlement. So the settlement was old, the settlement was new, the settlement that was upcoming in a new country. So Intezar Hussain tells a story to Zakir, and the whole story, the setup, the background of the story, begins from the time when the British Raj was there, the colonizers were there. Then it continues to the time when India is divided, okay, the 1947, when Zakir, the character, has to move to Pakistan, to a new country, and then again his story continues till 1971 when Bangladesh became independent. East Pakistan became independent. His story is based on the memories, back and forth, back and forth. The memories he's traveling between them, and these memories, uh, it it constantly talks about one of the main theme of partition literature, that is homeland. So the question in most of the partition literature is about their homeland, their home, the longing for their home. And why a longing for their home? You have to understand the condition, the situation of people. You have to place yourself in that position and imagine, being uprooted from a land where they were born, where they were brought up, where they have collected a lot of memories of friends and relatives, of love and lost, and then suddenly uprooted from that place and being pushed into a new country which is not known to them. Okay, the land, the terrain, maybe the language, the food, because this is this time when the whole, it wasn't called a global village, because what would you call a global village? Something that you understand, you know it through your access. Internet has made it very easy for us to know the culture, the food, the language of the countries around us. Okay, but this is the time when there's nothing, and there is just a few development which you see in which Zakir tells in his about his place Rupnagar. He talks about electrification of his town. So electrification of his town is seen as modernization, something modern coming up, which was opposed by Zakir's father, stating that he doesn't like the modern things because uh, it's uh, it's putting an impact, negative impact on the lives of the people. Because then there is modernization, then there is series of disease that affects the people of that small town, and they die. So Zaki's father opposes this modernization of the city, and he constantly dwells into the tradition, the past. But in Zaki's case, Zakir dwells in his memories. So despite being in a new country, having a job, teaching, and having a teaching profession, uh, his memory his memory takes him back to Rupnagar, also because Rupnagar was a place where he had fallen in love with a woman who was the daughter of his auntie. Now, love and homeland. That one has to understand that love is a very essential, or it's a very deep emotion, whether it's love for a person or whether it's love for that country, love for your home. It always pulls a person back, because one feels that I belong there. There is this belonging, because you have people who know you. There are people who with whom you can interact with. You do not feel alienated, and this is the reason why, despite being settled well, having a job, uh, having a job which pays him well, he says that he continues to travel back, to Rupnagar. He talks about how he spent his time as a teenager, how he spent his time summer breaks when he used to come back to Rupnagar before going to Vyaspur, his home, just to meet his lover. So Zakir's story in the novel Basti tells about how the impact of political decisions has impacted on this common lives, every individual lives, and Zakir is one. Zakir portrays that pain of having been uprooted from that place where he has grown up, having been taken away um, from her lover, from his lover. So these are the things that constraints in, which is discussed in Basti, which Intizar Hussain talks about. And he also tells about one incident where Zakir's mother tells to write a letter back to Rupnagar, but there is no response. This also shows that India right after partition um, has not yet settled down. There were still conflicts, although the writer has not mentioned that. It is just left like that. That is Intizar Hussein's style of writing. There is no completion. So he leaves a person hanging, in that emotional state, just left to decide on their own. It is just open ended. So he hasn't said why she doesn't respond to Zakir's letter. So one can just keep on thinking whether it was because of this, political clash between India and Pakistan, which immediately began right after, India's partition because of the Hindu and Muslim conflict, religious conflict, or whether it was whether it was detachment being created, that my very own has left me back in a place where in a place all by myself. So it could be anything. This is Intizar Hussein's Basti. It's about a settlement and what would happen within this settlement. Different stories, layers and layers of stories, which is being told by told through Zakir, the character, the protagonist of the story. Now, there are few other, popular literatures, novels written based on Partition, which is Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children. It has also been adapted into films. And then Bapsi Sidhwa's Ice Candy Man, which was the first publication, was named as Cracking India, which was published in 1991, and later renamed as Ice Candy Man and published in the year 1988. Now, all the three of it, four of it, Khushwant Singh's Train to Pakistan, Basti, then Salman Rushdie's Midnight's Children, Oxy Sidhwa's Ice Candy Man. All of this, as the most popular partition literature to be read, there are a few more that I haven't, added into it. Uh, they all are expressing every individual's identity crisis. And where does this identity crisis come from? Uh, when a person, when you introduce a person for the first time, yourself for the first time, maybe not to someone in your locality, but somewhere outside, the first thing you introduce is your name, and then you introduce from where you come from. So the place that you tell that I come from this place, okay, suppose I'm from Orissa, so I identify myself as coming from Orissa. I'm an Oriya. Then comes whatever my ethnicity or my religious background, secondary. So my roots is my identity. Okay. So when I'm uprooted from a place, that means there is a crisis in my identity. How would I present myself? From where do I come from? From which part of the country or which part of this world I belong to? So identity crisis is a big trauma in partition literature, concentrated by almost all the writers in different forms, okay, in different situations, in different events. Identity crisis in a new nation, one uprooted from a place called India, okay, just being a Muslim. being taken to Pakistan, and another who is a Hindu being uprooted from Pakistan coming to India. So both of them have their identity crisis because their land is new. They're uprooted from where they belong to. So identity crisis, homeland, which gives them a recognition of belongingness, is a theme mostly discussed in the literature. Moving on to short stories, we have Sadat Hassan Manto's Toba Tek Singh. Now, Toba Tek Singh's the story Toba Tek Singh has also been taken as a title by Gulzar to write poetry. And Toba Tek Singh, let's discuss about Toba Tek Singh. Toba Tek Singh talks about this character, this character called Bhisam Singh. Now, Bhisam Singh is a lunatic. He has lost his mind. Now, losing a mind, there's no background to Bhisam Singh's story. Where does he come from? People have just understood that Bhisam Singh comes from Toba Tek Singh, this place where he belongs to. But no one knows where Toba Tek Singh is. So the whole story in Toba Tek Singh begins with the asylum. Now the asylum itself, a madhouse. It kind of reflects the mad state of the uh, partition, the India during partition. Everyone is mad, like mad in the sense that they're confused. They have no sense of time, they have no sense of place. Well, yes, there is a sense of time, but there is no sense of place, like which place they are headed to or which place their country would be in, like in terms of location. Like when the boundaries were drawn, no one knew in which side of the line that their village would be, whether it would be in the Pakistan side or whether it would be in the Indian side. So one of the discussions in stories, poetries, another discussion in story poetries was the confusion that was based on the partition, because this partition was just declared, stating that India would be British. India would be divided into two, one as India and other as Pakistan, and there would be a line drawn. Uh, so a lawyer from Britain was called, and and he was asked to draw this line that would divide British India in two halves. That line is called as your Radcliffe line. Now, when this Radcliffe line was drawn, people had no idea as to which side of the land they would belong to, line they would belong to. Now, Toba Tek Singh's case is the similar. He is visited by a friend called Afzal, and Afzal, he keeps giving him information about his family, his daughter, who is, in this 15 years, she has become a crossed a teenager. She has become a lady, already at an age to get married. But by this time, partition has happened, and he informs that your family has been safely moved to India. Uh, the madhouse that you would see in Toba Tek Singh, the asylum, every individual in the asylum has one question: what is Pakistan, or what is Hindustan? Where is Hindustan? What is this place called Hindustan? What do the people, how do this speak, what language do the people speak? Or uh, what are the kind of food they eat? So every uh, lunatic, everyone in that asylum had one question asking each other, and no one had the answer. None of them had the answers. Just the same situation for every normal, non-lunatic lunatic person in the country. Like, where are they headed to? Okay, what is Hindustan and what is Pakistan? Because before the divide of India, no one had a clue because it was just one country. So everyone had this question: Hindustan and Pakistan. These are the two major countries that has been created. And who is going to live in Hindustan and who is going to live in Pakistan was another decision. So when the story Sada Mantu writes is taking Bhisam Singh as a character, And he tells about this asylum where Bhisham Singh is there, and mm, you know, when the whole of India is already divided, the final decision was done that the asylum, the members of the asylum, the lunatics, the madmen of the asylum, will also have to be taken to the Hindustan mental, ward and the Pakistan mental ward, to that uh, asylum. Now the decision was done, the list was made, and in the meantime, there were a lot of chaos inside the market. There is already a chaos, but there was more chaos. There was fight. There was screaming. The mad people were creating ruckus inside the asylum. And what I'm trying to mean here is, you look at this madhouse, where Bhisam Singh is there. It clearly presents the state of the nation during the time of partition, the confusion, the fight, the riot, the communal violence, which, the communal violence which led to bloodshed and more. Now, Tilba Cake Singh, when he was taken for, to be transferred to Hindustan side, because he being a Hindu, he refused to move to Hindustan side. Okay, and because no one had the answer where his place, Toba Tek Singh, is, whether it is in Pakistan or whether it is in Hindustan. He was only promised one thing, that is, uh, your Toba Tek Singh will also, if Toba Tek Singh is in Pakistan, you will be immediately transferred to Toba Tek Singh. But right now, you have to move to Hindustan. He refused to do so because he was already a stubborn man, always standing against the wall for all these 15 years, and did not talk to anyone except for the gibberish that he used to utter at times when he was irritated or when he was angry. Apart from that, he did not talk with anyone. So Bhisham Singh, he, he runs off and stands in the middle of the two lines, between the two fences. The night passes and it is just dawn when Bhisham Singh cries aloud, and then he falls down on that land. The member, the attendant of the asylum, they rush to, see what has happened, and they find Bhisham Singh lying dead on that ground. Now this image of Bhisham Singh lying on that soil between the two fence is kind of representing that Bhisham Singh has reclaimed his space, reclaimed, or he has declared that no man's land, that small space that where he fell down as Toba Tek Singh, a land which he would call at his home, because no one could confirm where Toba Tek Singh is. So Bhisham Singh, which is dead, lying flat on that, lying dead on that piece of land, uh, kind of reflects that he has declared that place as mine. Because if you look into, the most emotional aspect of, our um, living, every individual, coming from any religion, if you would have heard it from your, elders, that I would die in my soil. Okay, I would die in my homeland, or bury it in my homeland, in my where I was born, or drown my ashes in this particular place. So there is this connection to the land. One wants to be, one who is born in that land wants to die in that same land. They do not want to be taken away, or dislocated, or displaced from to a different place, because then it's causing a kind of a trauma to them. And the trauma is seen in Bhisham Singh, where he has completely lost the sense of the space, and lost the sense of what is happening around him. Similarly, we have another story which presents the women situation, which is written by Rajinder Singh Bedi. The title of the story is Lajvanti. The title Lajvanti, uh, like in Hindi, Lajvanti means touch me not, that plant, touch me not. Rajwanti also means a character who is, or a person who is shy, okay, shy in nature. Now, Rajwanti is a very common Indian name or a Hindu name uh, given to women, because women are considered to be, docile, shy. So this whole image that's created of women, that she is dependent, she is docile, she needs to be taken care of. She is the caretaker of the household. She is the caretaker of the children. She is the provider of she her maternal nature basically. And then again, she is also considered as the epitome of morality, of the social morality of her family. She is considered as, like in Hindi, it would be called the Izzat of the family. Uh, Now, Lajvanti is the story where this character Lajvanti, uh, she's been abducted during partition. Now, just to give you a background of what were the policies that was made for abducted women and children of partition. There was a policy of uh, taking back the women and children back to their families. So there was a policy being made that every family, after having recognized their family members, especially the women and the children, they have to take them back with the open hearts. Now, this provision was done in order to, give give the women a safe place back, okay, back to their families, a safe haven for them. But there was a social problem, and that social problem is discussed in the story with reference to Ramayana, where where Lajpanti's husband, Surendra Lal, he enters into a discussion that was there happening during while his processing process, this whole group, uh, discussing about, women's chastity has always been a question. And this question is already there in Raman. If Ram, being a god, had a doubt upon Sita, and he asked for a chastity test, why not it be common for us? Because he's a god and we are just a common people. So that whole story has been taken as a discussion, taken as an understanding that how this position of women during partition has been affected a lot, because women who were being abducted, they were never taken back. So the last stage, the last option remaining for the women was either to commit suicide, uh, poison themselves, or just go and live a life of a different identity. So these were the only options for women. Now, in large quantity, a similar thing happens where a large quantity is being exchanged now. So there was this whole process of exchanging the women. Now, uh, when Rajvanti was brought back uh, to her village, her husband is astonished to see Rajvanti to be more healthier and looking much better than she was while she lived with her husband, because her husband used to beat her because he considered this as normal. And Lajvanti accepted the beating, thrashings, the abuse as normal, because that is the part of a married woman's life. This is what she understood. But after her abduction, Lajvanti maybe had lived a better life away from her marital home, away from her husband. She looked healthier, she looked plumber, and her husband was totally, confused as to whether Lajvanti you know, would like to be back in the house. He also had this moral constraint of accepting a woman who was abducted, because with abduction, it's already there's this whole doubt that the chastity is in question. The values, uh, the moral grounds of the family has been totally destroyed with the women being abducted, kidnapped, raped. So this whole understanding that you know, the victim is the problem in during partition is one aspect that is discussed in portrayed in Rajganti, and it's talking about women, how women have been have been at the receiving end at a worse state than men, because men have experienced the horrors of bloodshed. They have seen beheaded men lying. But what about women? Women have seen the worst. They have lost their families. They have lost their name. They have lost their identity. They have lost a voice. They never had a voice, and they have further lost their identity. A very similar story that is that is written by Amrita Pritam in her novel Pinjar, where this Hindu woman is abducted because of a family conflict by a Muslim abductor, and this girl Puro has to get a new name to live, without any problem, without any question, in a Muslim family. So change of identity. Women has always been in a state of change of identity. According to Hindu Marriage Act, a woman has to change her surname from her father's name to the husband's surname. But now, in case of women of partition or women who have been abducted and have to rebuild their lives, re-enter into a new space, a new nation, in a new house, then she has a multiple identity. She has the change, multiple times. Either it is by mostly by force. So this concentrates in the story of Lajvanti. There's another story written by M.G. Basanji, Dear Khatija, and Khatija talks about two young girls. The setting is in Amritsar, and it's a letter based story. So it's like a diary written, and it's the format of the writing is very beautiful. So the story begins in like a diary entry, and in the diary entry, you know, uh, the daughter of Khatija's friend Madhu, Madhu's daughter, reads the diary entry of Madhu, her mother, and she tries to bring Khadija and Madhu together. And this is post-partition, you know. And Khadija and Madhu have been separated because of partition, and Madhu has constantly wanted to get in touch with Khadija, but Khadija, having moved from Amritsar to a new place, uh, which is not addressed by the writer in clear lines, but definitely has experienced that bitterness, the religious, the communal violence that she has experienced on her journey to a new country. She never responds to Madhu's letters, and Madhu mentions that in her diary that Khatija has never had responded to her letters. So Khatija and Madhu have been a very close friends since their childhood. Now they happen to meet because of Madhu's daughter in a foreign land, and the expression, there is no joy. They are expressionless. There is no joy of having met a long lost friend. So there's a blank expression in both of them, which Madhu's daughter mentions in the story, that maybe it is because of their age and because of all the family responsibilities that they have been taking, all these years, and they have their problems of the old age. Maybe that joy of having met a friend in a foreign land is lost. So that loss of joy, the loss of that relationship, the joy of meeting an old friend, it is created by the bitterness of partition. Now, these are a few stories that's talking about the relationship, the status of the woman. So, like I told you like in the introduction itself, that the themes are usually concentrating of homeland, about the belongingness, the identity crisis, and how women affected by the partition are being treated. So this will be discussed in Large Quantity, and also A Leaf in the Storm, where women's decision, the right to her body, and the women's decision to have a voice, women's voice, to have her own voice, have her own say, has been objected because of the societal norms. Now, uh, being opposed to a colonial literature, also having the thematics of post-colonial literature, uh, all of this is looking into migration. It is also looking into marginalization, subjugation of women from different through different stories. Another, like coming to the poetry part, we have already discussed two novels, story, and now the poetry. For poetry, poetry written by W.H. Auden, Partition, it talks about the hurried decision that uh, in which the Radcliffe line was drawn. So this man who was appointed to draw that line of partition, he was given an old map. So W.H. Auden criticizes here how the fate of the nation was built on a outdated map. There was no current census. There was no new map. The situation, the no one knew what was the population of current population, uh, the kind of topography. Nothing was being understood, and there was just a hurried decision to be made that India be divided into two and a line be drawn. So on a outdated map, uh, Sir Ratcliffe had to draw a line across, dividing two places. Now this line, the line, the Radcliffe line, he calls this Radcliffe line as bloody. Why? Because it created a lot of bloodshed. It created a lot of bloodshed, and definitely was the line that decided the future of the nation, the people's, future of the people. That only line Auden has criticized in a manner which also comments on how the British government was um, uh, least interested on the welfare of India, their colonized country. They were least worried about the people. So Auden critiques that in his poem Partition. Aga Shahid Ali writes a poem called Learning Urdu. There is another thing that we concentrate in partition literature is the language, the use of language-based identity. Now, language is also an identity marker of uh, of every individual, of people of the country, of different ethnic groups and different regions. Now, Aga Shahid Ali, in Learning Urdu, he talks about this uh, people trying to hide their identity because they belong to different nations. And he begins his line by stating there's a line in his poem where it says, "The victim of a continent broken in two in 1947." So he talks about this person who is a victim of this broken continent, which had been happening then in 1947. And this person, like he talked a mix of Dongri and Urdu. So this person is trying to hide his identity by trying to speak a new language just to be not caught as a person coming from the Indian side, the Indian land, because there is a threat of life. He ends his poem with Mir saying that, I would want to be like that Mir. I would want to be like that person. I'm like a person standing on this crossroad, unable to decide which side I should choose, or I should be like a or the language should not be a medium of discrimination. Language should not create boundaries. Language should not create hatred. He speaks about language that is now speaking about bloodshed, which is now speaking about hatred. So learning Urdu, like the essence of Urdu, he talks about Urdu as a beautiful language, Urdu as a language which is very poetic in nature. So people who have been speaking Urdu language, their way of talking, the way of communication has been very polite and has been uh, in a very conversation, poetic, like in a poetic conversation. So that conversation would be about the weather, would be about the general information around the general events that happen, the news around them, happening around them, and this language could be you can one would speak in that language in Urdu to anyone. There was no discrimination of the hierarchies of the classes, economic classes. Uh, Aga Shahid Ali also has a similar poem talking about the language. The butcher at Chandni Chowk. Like he talks about a butcher uh, to whom he constantly usually goes, who is situated near Chandni Chowk, and the kind of communication they have, the exchange of dialogues they have. He talks about Urdu as a language or as an identifier, as a beautiful poetic language. But now that language has become a medium to propagate what hatred, a medium to propagate bloodshed. So rather than the language which was already talking about love, which was also talking about cosmic love, about a love for God, okay, or a love for things in general, has now become a medium to spread a language medium to spread violence. So learning Urdu, Aga Shahid Ali speaks that language as an identifier, and one trying to hide, trying to speak a different language just to hide their identity. Um, Talking about nostalgia in Partition, one of poetry which is written by Jivanananda Das, sorry if I pronounced it wrong, he writes, I shall return to this Bengal. He mentions this Bengal. Now, which is this Bengal? He talks about the Bangladesh. He talks about the land where he would return to. You know, Bengal again being divided by religious majority. The west side about the Hindu majority and the east side being the Muslim majority. So probably he's talking about moving to Bangladesh where he had, he had begun his life. Where he was born. He talks about becoming a bird, you know, not as a man. He wants to visit his land, homeland, Bengal, that Bengal, or this Bengal. He wants to return to this Bengal as a bird and not as a man. Why does he seek? Why does he desire to become a bird? Because boundaries are meant for humans. Boundaries are not meant for birds. Birds can fly. Birds are not restricted by boundaries. So Das expresses his desire that if I become a bird, I would go and visit this Bengal, like his homeland Bengal in Bangladesh, and he would enjoy all the beautiful things that he has cherished as a child. He would become a myna or he would become a fishing kite, and he would just fly and visit to his land where there is a beautiful stream where he would see this small boat floating in the river. So he describes his desire, his nostalgia for homeland, and he wishes that his desire be fulfilled by him when he turns into a myna bird or a fishing kite. And he says that I shall return to this Bengal, perhaps not as a man, but as a myna or a fishing kite. So this is what he desires. Now, uh, there is one last poem that I would want to discuss is Fair's Shabe Azadi, also known as Dawn of Freedom. Now, if you listen to Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru's speech on the midnight of India's independence, his speech is about the dream or the promise of an independent India, the promise of a land where every individual would be independent, a promise of a land, a beautiful land where they they would have their owners and their what would you call it, like they have been respected. Okay, they are not humiliated. They have been treated as the people of that land with all of respect. They have their individuality. They are free to enjoy their food, their language, their culture, and everything, and of a developing nation. But in Dawn of Freedom, Fez has this question, not in relation, although he writes in relation to the separate to about both the nations. Has the dawn of freedom really happened? The promise of an independent nation is fulfilled, or whether it is just a promise, it is just a promise unfulfilled. So that dawn of freedom has it been already, the freedom has been achieved, the independence has been achieved, the promise has been fulfilled. He talks about that in his poem, The Dawn of Freedom, Shabe Azadi. I think we have just a few minutes left, and I have been all this while talking about partition literature, from novel literature, literature, novels, poems, and short stories. If you have any questions you want to ask, that would be great. You can ask some questions. I'll just stop here. If you have any doubts, if you have anything to add, um, it would be good.
Yes, you may now ask your questions. Deepika, there is a question in the message box, I guess.
Yeah, hi, ma'am. Am I audible?
Yes, you are audible, Prasanta.
Yes, please be.
Am I audible, ma'am? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. Hi, ma'am. I just wanted to ask you. I mean, I was reading the Gunra's Gravelheart. Like, I'm halfway into the novel, and you talked
Mhm.
about the idea of belongingness, right? You talked about the idea of associating oneself to a particular place. So
Right,
I
particular
have
place,
been,
yeah.
I have been understanding that yes, of course, that theme is a very that same theme is very prominent in Gunra's novel, but again, do you think that the same sense of belongingness is reflected in in any of the partition literature? I mean, of course, people migrating from one country to another, of course it's there, but then I mean, do you think there is any correlation between the two? I don't know if I'm being able to put myself
Yeah, yeah,
rightly, but
I
do you
get
think
that.
there is
Yeah,
any
Prashant.
correlation between the two? I mean, the kind of
Yes,
belongingness that is evident in Gunra's novel, I mean, Gravelheart, and the one that is evident in partition literature, which you talked
okay.
about, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah. So I haven't actually read almost all the partition literatures. I have just read a few, and since uh, like I'm like in a gradual process of reading almost all, like trying to, not just because it's a part of also our course here, but as an interest which I had begun a long time back, and gradually I got into the whole lecturing lectures that I had to give for the classes. But so far, what I have read and what I have understood when it comes to partition literature, and what the most concentrating theme is belongingness in almost everything, even if it is about it's in the short stories or it is in any of the novels, uh, where the one question that most of the characters, the protagonist, usually questions is where my belonging is. Where do I belong? Because that's one concentrating thought. That's one thought, because of which the whole traumatic, like I've sorry, I'm not able to articulate it well. I'll begin again. So the story is about, like most of the stories, being uprooted from one place and being thrown. I would call it as thrown into some other place. Now, if one is like thrown, let me take myself. I'll see. Uh, I being picked up from one place and completely, thrown, I would be traumatized. A place which would be completely alien to me, where I would not understand my language, where I would not, the language of the people, I'd not be comfortable with the kind of food, with the topography, with the climate, then obviously I would not feel that I belong to this place. Despite there is a whole political decision being made that this is my fate, that I will be called a resident of this place because the country has decided. I will be recognized as a person from this, but emotionally, from my mental state, I am yet still not feeling that belongingness to the new country, but I am what belonging to that place. So also in a few Bengali films, um, mm, I'm yet forgetting the name. Maybe if one can get through me later, I'll let you know the name of the films. There is one story. It talks about the time when there was the Bengal famine, when people started migrating from Bangladesh to West Bengal, like Kolkata. So this old lady, I'll just giving an example. This old lady has been married into this home. Okay, so for a woman, like the society has made, the home of a woman is the home of her husband. Okay, so she belongs to her husband's family. She's a husband. She belongs there. So this old lady, she's been constantly told that the land our land has been affected, and everyone is migrating to Kolkata, to find a job, to find a shelter and things. But this woman refuses, saying that this is my home and I'm not going to leave this home. This is where I am married to, and this is where I'll live, and this is where I'll die. So she understands her belongingness to that place where she is being married to, her belongingness to the man she was married to the family she marries to that whole, to that village, to that locality where she was married to. So that is belongingness. And almost in all the stories, whether it's adapted into films, whether it has, events have been taken from the history and made into stories, that belongingness has been always there. The question of where do I belong. Amrita Pritam's novel Pinjar, where the character Puru is still in the dilemma where her Hindu fiance, comes back during the exchange of women, requests, you come back, we will accept you wholeheartedly. But then she refuses to come back to India, come back to her brother and fiance, thinking that whether she would belong to that new land or not, because um, her identity now was a Muslim identity. She was comfortable in her new identity because her new identity was also, comfortable in the space of that land, because that land had not changed. She was just abducted by a Muslim man. So that belongingness, the question of belongingness continues to be there. I hope I have answered another student's message, like question in that, where she has asked how this political decision has shaped people's life. Yes, it has in a many way affected people's life, because like I mentioned, that political decision of how getting the partition, drawing that line that would divide India, and that would divide the people in two religious majority, one as Hindus, one as Hindus, and another as Muslims, has shape their lives. I living next to a neighbor who might be a Hindu or a Muslim, and then there's a hatred being created. The whole political decision is not based on the individual's life, that what is going to happen to them, their life, their land, but it is just a political decision so that these two, upcoming powers, the Muslim League and the nationalists, their power could be, could get a space where they could individually, have their power of control. So for the Muslim majority, Muslim League, there was built a Pakistan for the Hindu majority, the Hindustan. So yes, it has affected the lives of the people. Look at Mantos. If you look into Manto's biography, I'm not just talking about Nandita Das's film on Manto, but if you also look at, you read a few stories of Manto, you would see that how Manto feels displaced, because he loved Mumbai, he loved India. He felt that he belonged to that place because he had his friends. He had all these left progressive writers of his time. Ishmael Chuttai was there. And there is again another layer when it comes to partition, which I would not discuss now. But Manto had to leave Pakistan and leave India and move Pakistan because of the fear of death. Okay, fear of death, fear that his family might get into danger. But the way he used to express in his writings, his writings gave a very hard-hitting reality of the society, and he was called a vulgar writer when he was in Pakistan, and most of his writings were opposed. There was no acceptance of his writings in Pakistan, because of which also there was a setback. He was traumatized, and Bhisam Singh's trauma somewhere reflects, Manto's trauma of not being accepted, because at one point of time, even Manto's state of mind was questioned. If you read into Manto's biography, like what had happened post independence when Manto shifted, moved to Pakistan side. So you can understand how the writer themselves have presented their state of trauma, their experiences in their writings. Right? Any more questions if I have missed?
Deepika, I want to add something.
Yes, please.
Something in the sense, when we speak about this partition, we must relate it to the phenomenon of this diaspora.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
both are two different things, I know,
Mm,
but somehow they can be related in the sense they both of them, they search for the root, ROOT, root. And
root, yeah.
when you speak about you were also speaking about this belongingness. When we speak about this belongingness, it is not always about the root. It is sometimes the sense of belongingness, or one's desire to belong somewhere.
Hmm,
Such as during the time of partition, people on the basis of their religions also, wanted to belong to somewhere, to some land, either Pakistan or Hindustan.
yes.
Okay, even in the diaspora, if we see, look at that, then people want to belong to some other country. But
Hmm,
in both cases, the similarity is they also later on search for their roots,
yes.
and this is different. This is where that all the difference lies,
Hmm,
because those who migrated to India or those who migrated to Pakistan, they are right now they are in search of their roots. Not
hmm,
not they are not feeling any belongingness to this place. It is not like that.
hmm,
They are trying to belong to this place, or to the other side of the border, but at the same time they are also searching for their roots. We must differentiate these two things. And as far as I know, in partition literature or in diaspora studies, these two things are not being differentiated by people in their studies.
hmm, hmm.
How do you think? Am I wrong?
Uh, well, you're not wrong, like not having that difference, because both has the similar sense. When it comes to seeking the root or finding their roots, it a person's root also gives them a sense of that belonging. That my roots that, so I belong to that. So I think they're somewhere. The both are of the same, like it's understood in a similar way. If I'm talking about being belonging, like belonging, where my root lies. I belong to this place because those are my roots. Okay, or I belong to this place because it could be more of that aspect of being accepted in that space, and that is why I belong to this place. For example, like we have different migration, like it is a push or a pull migration. So in both the cases, in push and pull migration, you would see that the migrated people try to they belong to this place. They're not trying to seek a route, but they are, when the place of migration is kind of, they belong to this place. वो बाद वाला story बन जाता है, like it becomes a later story. But like looking at the stories from Trinidad and Tobago, all these indentured laborers who have moved on, and for most of the Caribbean literature that talks about the diasporic situation, that talks about what the belonging, the roots, the roots. But it doesn't talk about belonging to that, because they are already belonged to that
No,
new
no, that is
space now.
that is not belonging. That is just longing.
Yeah, longing.
Yeah.
Yeah, longing, but at the same time that it's just a little reflection, tidbits here and there, where they talk that my root belongs to that. There is no major discussion about the roots there, that my roots come from here or there. Like in V.S. Nepal's A Bent in the River, it talks about this Indian family who comes from the Gujarat side, but it doesn't talk about the roots. In fact, the other people who have migrated to that Africa, the east of Africa, it doesn't talk about the roots of the people. It just talks about the diaspora, the movement of the people for different reasons, reason into that region, African region.
Do you
So
remember? Do you remember
yes,
that shop? Do you remember that shop in Lucknow, Lahore Opticals?
Lahore Opticals. Yes, Lahore
So
Opticals.
what
Yes,
does it say? Belongingness or search for the root?
it's not search for the root, belongingness.
They
I,
wouldn't
I
have
I
come
feel it's
if it was belongingness. They wouldn't have come to India. More precisely to Lucknow. They would have stayed there back in Lahore itself.
yes, but could be like undivided India, the time when maybe the ancestors came from Lahore, and they had their business in Lucknow, because there was a train that came down from there with a lot of fruits, food, and stories.
Mm.
So I think it's about belonging to that place. The person who belongs from Lahore is situated here. I don't think so. It's talking about the roots in any sense. Like I would not. For me, it doesn't seem like it's talking about the roots, but it states like Lahore Opticals. This belongs to people coming from Lahore, kind of.
Yeah, that is the root, na, isn't it?
So it's confusing in that sense.
No,
It's confusing in the sense when
we
it
must
is.
differentiate it. We must differentiate it and
Yeah.
assert some certain degree of meaning to each of these two words.
Yeah.
Even
Okay.
in Hyderabad, you have this Karachi bakery.
Correct. Yes.
They also migrated from Karachi.
Hmm.
And that is where actually it occurred to me that this root and belongingness might be two separate entities.
Hmm.
Where do I belong? Where do I belong? When I stayed in Lucknow, I belong to Lucknow. But where my root is in Assam.
In Assam.
Even even now, I want to belong to Lucknow, but my
Okay.
root is in Assam.
Yeah.
That, that
Seems
is
the
that is
case.
the that is the thing. That is more
Hmm.
precisely with the case with the diaspora.
Hmm.
But somewhat similar is with the case with the partition victims as well.
Yes.
But can we limit the idea of belongingness only to I mean, only to a place as such, or we could like it's more of some kind of a it's more like is it an abstract thing? Like when you say that we belong to a particular place, so does belongingness imply only a place or something more than that?
Actually, it is something more than that. Belongingness, uh, actually, it comes with not only the spatial, also with the cultural sense. It comes with that as well.
Right, sir.
You cannot belong to a place devoid of any cultural identity or cultural attachment. That is why I understand.
Right, sir. Yeah.
But Prasanto, at the same time, when you speak about culture, every culture has some geographical territories. That is what gives it an essence, a particular essence of a particular culture, because of that geographical territory. So that way, the place is also important along with its culture. Otherwise, there would have been many Assams outside the geographical territory of Assam. People are forming a Assam association everywhere, in Delhi, in Lucknow, in Hyderabad, in Mumbai, but those are not Assam, right?
So
Because
those are
geographical.
basically appropriation.
Mhm.
So I think those are more of an appropriation kind of thing, a cultural appropriation as such.
Appropriation
I
in a
mean,
sense,
appropriation would not be the correct term. Yes, of
that is
course.
actually what you said, the what was that abstract thing, abstract idea that we the
Right,
Assamese
sir.
people, but when we say we are the Assamese people in Delhi, then we also make it clear that this is not Assam. So we
Right,
also
sir.
make it clear that the space is not there.
Mm.
Although we are retaining our culture, the space is not there.
Right.
So both space and culture should be there so that one can belong to that culture properly or belong to a place properly. Dr. Mitul sir is saying something. As Dr. Mahanta said, though they migrated in search of belongingness, but most of the time they did not get it, and that very thing is bringing crisis in people's lives from both sides. Yes. If we continue this debate of belongingness and religion, then there are so many contradictory ideas.
Yeah,
And now, if I elaborate this thing, it will become political.
exactly.
So actually, I was thinking of going into that, but I somehow stopped myself. That's the reason I didn't go into that area.
It will become political in the sense,
Exactly, sir.
on one hand, we claim that certain ethnic group belong to India, belong to Assam,
Assam.
so we are all Assamese or we are all Indian. On the other hand, we are saying that certain religion migrated from some other places, so those people who were born here, they don't belong to us. This is contradictory thing.
So that's the reason more many people, I mean, the mainstream left usually give us the title of ethno-fascist, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
the Assamese people.
On one hand, when we study partition literature, our uh, main emphasis is that the land where our root lies, where we belong, matters more than our religion.
Mm.
This is the essence of this partition theory, partition literature. And when we look at these current political discourses, then we think that, okay, land where we were born doesn't matter. It is our religion and origin of the religion that matters. It is totally contradictory ideas these are. Anyone else want to add something or ask something? Yes, Akashjyoti Sharma, he is asking, in that sense, could those associations become a fabricated space for the people living outside the home state?
So,
As I mentioned, the Assam Association, Assamese people gathering together in Delhi, Lucknow, Mumbai, Hyderabad.
It's not just for people coming from your state, but it's if you go to like different states, like uh, college, take for example universities. The students have their associations, like their state associations. Uh,
What Bipin sir would have called parochialism, right?
yes, yes, parochialism. So, Orissa had its own, like Assam, Bengal, like the Bengal, if I call Bengal, mostly like the Calcutta students. Sorry, not to, I'm not pointing, hitting at anything, but it has been like that. Like, uh, it would be a Bengali, West Bengal Student Association, or it would be coming from Southern India. So it's there, but it's, how would you call it, as a fabricated space? Like, would those association become a fabricated space for people? How would you call it a fabricated space? In what sense?
What should we
Like,
call it then?
these groups are basically, I think, the formation, the main purpose of the formation of these groups, these associations, are mostly cultural and religious gatherings. What I have come across many a times, to
Mm.
celebrate their state festivals, to celebrate, yeah, basically state festivals, mostly that. So from my own state, I had seen like various state festivals being, um, so belongingness. It's not fabricated. It's just, getting students or people from your place, from your state, assembling of these people in a new space, like making them feel that, okay, you do have your people around you. So in the sense that, not to make them feel that they are, alone in that new space, in that uh, new region, or maybe in that institution, that organization, or it could be like that particular part of that city. So I think it's just to bring together people coming from different states, uh, to just make them feel that, your people are still here, your people are here, and you can, like, you can rely on your kind of, your people, kind of. You do not have to feel that you're alone in this new space. I think more of it is, it's that. There could be other things, but to me, I felt that's not a fabricated space, but where the people could feel that yes, they have people coming from them, their place, and they can, seek help. You could, like, a lot of things, like basically exchange of thoughts, communication, and all that. I think in that sense.
In the macro level, when we speak about this partition, we are just talking about losing one's own country, own place of birth. We are talking about that only.
Hmm.
But in the micro level, this sense of homelessness that started with losing one's home, own home.
Hmm.
जो मकान होता है वो मकान
वो
खोने का घर
hmm,
ही नहीं
hmm,
मकान भी खो गया.
hmm,
Not only losing one's home, also house.
hmm,
I remember one of the teachers from Assam University, he narrated the story of his family, that his grandmother came to Assam after partition. His grandmother came to Assam, to Lamding, and his grandfather, he was nowhere to be found at that time. He was somewhere else. They were separated. And his grandmother, she had to spend several months at the railway station in Lamding. They had no house. Forget about home, they had no house.
hmm,
And the, those are the moments when those partisan victims, they felt that they had lost too many things. They have lost not only too many things, they have lost everything.
hmm, hmm, hmm,
That was the time they might have felt that.
hmm,
And along with that came this whole partition discourse, what we have lost, what we have left behind. And at the same time, I remember another story, not story, this is a real experience. When I was in Lucknow, we used to go out to Bengali Bazaar. You remember that place, I guess. Bengali Bazaar. And
No, no, I think I
even
have
if
not been to.
you haven't been to there, you haven't been to there, but we have been to there several times on Saturdays. So there, once we went there, and there was a tea stall. That tea stall was run by a Bengali migrant family. One day I was waiting there sipping tea, and my roommate, he went to buy some chicken, and I decided to stay back at the tea stall only. As I was sipping tea, it started raining all of a sudden, and there was one grandmother, old lady. She asked me in proper Sileti Bangla that come inside. It is unseasonal rain. It will give you fever. Come inside. I went inside the tea stall, and at the corner I found one glass bottle containing soil. Okay, I asked her, what is that? Is it soil? She said, yes, it is soil. When your grandfather was coming here, my grandfather means, since I call her grandma, her husband, she was referring to that when your grandfather came here to India, he brought this soil with him, and we thought we would build a house, and this soil will be put into the plinth. But that never happened. He went up, and soil remained in the bottle itself. This is just a reminder of what they have left behind. Loss of home. Where did I start? I actually lost track of that thing.
So basically, you were talking about it's not just that homeland, but actually most part of all the stories, all the literature that's written is not just talking about that space as a home, but that whole emotion that's attached to home. It could be that structure as a home, it could be that particular relation which you would call as a home. So I think there are various things. So like right now you're talking about how a person has this woman, her husband has carried this little soil and would put it in the plinth of their new house in their new land, would actually make them feel that that this is their
Hmm.
soil. They
Hmm.
still live in that soil. So it's more of that emotional connection to that place where you have been lived the most part of your lives.
Hmm.
It's also that. Well, literature sometimes we miss out on a lot of images that's created in literature. But if you're looking at if you're watching a film, I'll tell you like a few films that does talk about this. So one of the films that I was talking, a Bengali film by Nimai Ghosh. It was released in 1950. The film's name is Chinnamal, which means the
Hmm.
uprooted.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Hmm.
Chinnambul, see that how this all migrated people are just lying there on the platform of Howrah, and if there's disease, there is people dehydrated people without food. Like it's a very strong documented picture. Like no doubt the directors is critique that you cannot show such harsh things in a film because there are some limitations. Um, mm, but it does also talks about what we are calling at that ghar, home. So which is discussed the emotional contact, the emotional being, the feeling. So a lot of things are also about emotion. You see in another film, a Hindi film, which is Bhag Milkha Bhag, where when he goes back to the place uh, where he lived as a child, and he did see his grandfather being beheaded right in front of his eye. and the whole water canal where he and his friend used to swim across, just for fun. And he does. There's a flash of memory of his you know young days, of his childhood days. So there are like different. There are a lot of films that have also been able to express that the trauma, the emotions, the house, the home, the land, the space. So all the layers have been able to pictured in not just literature but also on the adaptations into films. Like a lot of literature which has been adapted into films. So I think partition literature in that sense is, the most discussed. I'll just add on which I wanted to, but I missed on it. The most discussed literature comes from the North Indians, north of partition, which is from the North Indian, India, Punjab side. Okay, the north of India side. But the lesser discussed, literatures are from the Bengal side. Okay, Bangladesh, Bengal, because this place has already seen a true divide, and it has not experienced that goriness or that bloodshed. There hasn't been that kind of a scene since situation created. So there was already migration happening from the east of Bangladesh towards the West Bengal side because of famine and the first divide and all.
I want to interrupt here. It
Hmm.
is not that those ghastly affairs were not there in this eastern part. Read
Mhm.
Malay Krishnadhar's Train to India. It is a personal memoir.
Mhm.
There he narrates how he experienced these killings and murders at the time of this partition
Mhm.
in East Bengal. So it was there, but the thing is, focus had been on the northwestern side rather
Yes,
than this
exactly. That is
northeastern
what I
side.
mean. There is literature, but
Yeah,
the most concentrated, when you say, partition literature, most concentrated literatures come from,
yeah,
concentrating in the
northwestern side. Yeah.
northern India, north side, and not coming from, the Bengal side. So that is what, like, what so both the side literature, the north side literature and the east side literature, they both are discussing like different themes being discussed, like focused on.
So, is there any more questions from anyone? So, this has been the longest session we have ever had. 1.5 hours, more than 1.5 hours.
Yeah, I think, yeah, 1 hour 33 minutes. Like, I think, like, I was able to help students with this, um, with the introduction of partition literature. I tried to reflect on, discuss on almost all the literatures that's being taught here in our college, and also your college, which would be like, okay,
Okay,
kind of
Dr.
like an opening thing for
Okay,
you.
Dr. Mitudusar is saying something about this eastern part of the partition. I would say eastern theater of this partition, that because the wound is so fresh that they don't want to articulate those. It reminds me of Urvashi Butalia's At the Other Side of Silence.
The other side of silence.
Yes. Bengal have she has had this three times: 1905, 1947,
Hmm.
1972. So the wound has been renewed, recut without getting dressed.
Yes, yes,
So
constantly.
constantly. So
Hmm.
they don't want to reflect on those things.
Hmm.
That is another matter. Yes, of course.
Hmm.
So thanks, Deepika, for this exhilarating presentation. Not
Thanks for the
presentation. It is
invitation.
you are always invited. Even without invitation, you are always welcome to deliver a lecture to our students.
Yeah,
Uh,
sure.
it was nice to meet you after so many years. After 2019, right? That was the
Yes,
last time we met.
2008. Yes, yes.
Sometimes I would expect you to deliver a lecture on film studies.
Well, I'm still to set my foot in that area, so
You are
let's
already
see.
doing research on that thing. You are already working
Kind
in
of
things.
partial. I would not say that I have
No,
completely.
for a polymath like you, there is no dearth of subjects.
No, I can talk about cuisines if you want. Maybe we can
Yeah,
begin a new
cuisines,
series of.
photography,
No,
films,
maybe we can begin a new series of literature that would be
cuisine literature or
food.
what?
Yeah, cuisine literature, food literature. We have travel writings. Why not food writings?
Yeah, yeah, travel writing. We can
Yes.
do that as well. So thank you once again, and thanks to your students as well for being patient so much for so long and joining us today. So this is the first time we are having guest students, not only guest lecturers, guest students with us.
They were very interested to join because
Yeah, we are very
it's
glad to host
part
them.
of it.
Uh, and now I request my colleague, Mr. Akash Sharma, to offer the vote of thanks. Akash, are you there?
Yes, sir. Am I audible?
Yeah, you are.
A warm good evening to everyone. I'm here to propose the vote of thanks on behalf of Department of English SPB Girls College. First of all, I'd like to thank our principal, Madam Dr. Bulbuli Borwa, for all her kind support. Uh, a big thank you to Deepika Lakra ma'am. Ma'am, it was really wonderful to host you this Sunday evening actually. And from the word go actually, you began with the brief history of partition, then you reflected upon literatures, different genres actually, short story, novels, poetry, and you gave a really holistic view about how the nature of the representation, the kind of fault lines in the partition, and also the larger consequences, and how it is still the wounds are yet to be healed actually. And I hope our students are highly benefited from your lectures, and also the post discussion with you, madam. Was really very engaging actually, I must say. And so we really look forward to having more in this series or in another form or platform actually. We would love to host you again, madam. I thank the student participants from Larambha College for their participation also. And with their participation actually, the today's session has become more special and more engaging, I guess. And it's a kind of exposure for our students also to listen to them and listen to you, madam. I thank Mr. Prashanto Mohanto, assistant professor from Simanto Shankardev University, for his valuable presence and engaging discussion, uh, engaging discussions. His views on partition literature and his discussion on Gunra's book actually was really personally really beneficial for me also. I thank Dr. Mithu Dusad, Madam from MCDS College, Kasar, for her participation also in this series. I must say that she has always attended every lecture of this series until this point of time actually. And thank you, Madam. And last but not the least, I thank our students. Even though it is a Sunday actually, but they really found some time and participated in this lecture. And without their participation, it wouldn't have been a great success. So I thank you all, and a very good evening once again, and hope to meet you sometime soon. Thank you, madam.
Thank you for having me. Santulan, you're not audible.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I forgot to unmute me.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks once again from my side.
Yeah.
And I guess that is the end of today's session.
Yeah.
Shall I say good night or good evening? It is
Good night would be
7:40.
nice. Yeah, good.
Good night will be
Yeah.
nice.
Yeah.
And happy Sunday dinner.
Yeah.
Right? Being a foodie, you must have something tonight.
Nothing. Right now I'm
That's
displaced from my space.
okay. That's surprising.
Yeah. Okay. Okay
Okay
thank you,
then,
and see you
and
soon.
see you soon. Once again,
Yeah,
some other time.
sure.
And Prasanto, hope to have you someday as a resource person with us.
Okay,
Yes.
sir, that would be my
Thanks
honor,
for the
sir. Of
discussion.
course. Sir, I mean, ma'am and sir, we three share this common thing, right, sir? We are all from IFLU.
Yeah,
Oh,
we all are
okay.
from
We are
IFLU.
all from IFLU.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you, ma'am.
All
Thank you,
right.
So
sir.
Yeah.
basically, it was three IFLUite talking, hey?
Yes. The three fluid talking.
Exactly right, sir.
That was not good. That was not good. It should have been our students instead of us three.
Exactly, sir.
Okay.
Right, sir.
All
So,
right
Okay,
then.
sir.
all right then, bye bye. We
Yeah.
are
Signing off.
Thank
stopping
you,
the
sir.
meeting here now.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Bye.